gang. This is Heather Biederman with Liberty Librarian, your source of intellectual freedom news and all sorts of odds and ends of history and current events and all of that. So hope you're having a great week. It's been just kind of an odd time. It's summer and the living is sort of easy. I mean, you sleep in and do your best. Work in the garden. We're supposed to have like thunderstorms. So last week, I think it was last week, it just seems like ages ago, I had one show on Wednesday that the power went out during, and then the day before our water main in the street busted open. So anything goes in media. So I hope that you are doing well. Let's see. I'm going to switch my banner off so you can see more. There's me. Yeah. So it's June 18th, 2020. And I was thinking about what I want to talk about this week and things I'm excited about. I'm excited about, so far, I'm going to Orlando in a couple weeks. So if you want to visit with Liberty Librarian or Sweet Subversive Heather, I will be there as a delegate for the state of Minnesota. And so far, it's not canceled. I mean, I think it's going to happen, so I'm going to go. It'll be great. I'm getting a spiffy new, it's a new kind of face shield for it since I haven't flown anywhere or really gone anywhere since this all started. It's like a weird one though. It like comes down around the neck and comes up. It's like a lot of food service people are using it and salon people, it's supposed to be more comfortable. So, it's not like squishing your head and, it covers you. And I think, the breath coming down, it's not going to go down and under it. So I'm kind of excited. I mean, I'll still have my cloth stuff available, to use if they ask me to, but I'm just curious at how it's all going to go. I mean, any of you been to the airport since all this started? I mean, it's kind of bonkers, right? I'm a little nervous about traveling, but I'm more excited about just having a normal life and going somewhere again. So knock on wood, it goes well and everything's okie dokie. This week is Father's Day weekend. So we're doing like 2 Father's Days. So one for my dad and one for my husband's dad. And so celebrate you and all you daddies out there. And somebody was your daddy. So, fathers, they're super cool, and we're going to celebrate by smoking meat as one does, right? We got a gigantic pork butt. It's like a football that we're going to be smoking and making super tender and have pulled pork sandwiches. So I am excited. It'll be nice to see the family. Just the last few weeks I've seen my family, and before that I hadn't seen hardly anyone. And so I'm just excited to have normal life coming up again, and we'll see unless they shut everything down again. But knock on wood, I want normal life. Normal life is awesome. And I'm excited about getting to go see them. I know there's a lot of planning and preparing as a delegate that I have to do. If you've never been a delegate for any state, for whatever political party you're in, it's really a great experience to get really close to understanding how important involvement in the political process is to making decisions. So I'm kind of excited. I got to shut down my email or I'll keep getting messages popping up. I'm like, don't need that. Bloop. Yep. All the electronic stuff. That's what sucks is like, don't want to save changes. No. Dang it. Technology. Just work for me. Yep. And it's going to do it on every single thing. I didn't change anything. Yeah. There we go. Beautiful. Now everything's shut down. Yeah. Live TV, y'all. It's the fun of doing a live show without anybody else to kind of help you like smooth it out. Yeah, so I'm you got to do a lot of research. You got to figure out things about candidates. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff where you talk to other people who know candidates and understand what they've done. You learn. There are a lot of things that aren't written on the internet, things that you can find out about a person's character. Like, are they someone who should be in charge? They may have a good brain and can talk in front of a group, but how do they vote? Are they going to be voting the same as you? So it's a process. And as a young person, I never would have thought I would be doing this stuff today. That being so politically involved is actually kind of fun, and you feel like you can make some changes in the world. And I think that's a good thing. We need to have people out there who are making changes for the world. And cheers to you. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's your cup of tea, right? There's lots of ways. I do think I really appreciate people right now who are being activists in whatever they're passionate about. I know the people I really appreciate the most were the ones that would go out and do cleanup. They brought food to people. They would help out someone if they needed to go to the doctor, go to the store, and they would watch their kids. I think that these are things that are doable, and we need to help our neighbors out. We need to help each other, because this is how we put all the pieces back together and make things better. And I do think the system's broken. It is very broken, and it's always been broken, but maybe we can make it a little bit better as time goes on. And one of the things I was thinking about was that, we're learning. In our country, we had slaves, and tomorrow is Juneteenth. A lot of white people especially, are like, what's Juneteenth? And if you've ever heard of the Emancipation Proclamation, that was the big speech by President Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to bring that up so I can look at that. And he spoke, let's see, that was... Here we go. That's what I wanted. There's too many things going on in the background. September 22nd, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation. It declares freedom for all Confederate-held slaves starting from January 1st, 1863. So he said it in September, just because he said it. And that's one of the misconceptions, is people said, like, the minute the words left his lips, they should have been free. And yeah, that's what I think too. They should have never been slaves. But 1863 is actually when it took place. So a lot of people, for many years, Juneteenth is when Texas finally got word of that the slaves are free. And I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of people celebrated the freedom of from slavery in the United States on January 1st, because that's the actual date that the law took place. But what's really hard for people to understand is that people didn't follow this order. The South were still like, screw you, we do what we want. So I'm going to just bring up a map. Let me see. That up quick. I think it's easier if you see it, right? Okay. And they also had states that were kind of in the middle. Let me see if I can figure that out. Here we go. This is a good one. Border states is what they're called. Okay, I'm opening this up. Oh, is this as tiny as it can be? God. Chose poorly. Okay. Well, I'm going to use it anyway because I think it's pretty good. If I click it, maybe zoom in. We'll try that. Okay, this will help. We'll switch to share screen. So, visual aid. This should be it. Okay, here's the United States of America, right? Now, on the greenish, bluish north states, these are free states. These are where the states where black and people of color in our country were considered free. And so this proclamation didn't really affect this much. The the states that need, and then you see on the left side, Oregon and California are actually part of that too. In the middle states, there's a lot of mountain areas, and those weren't considered states yet; they're territories. So Kansas was a part of it, and then there was like Oregon and not Oregon, Oklahoma. I'm sorry, and so you have different territories that really they did their own thing. Sometimes they had slaves, sometimes they didn't. It didn't matter. So then we have the red states here are the southern states, the Confederate states. And before the war broke out, these were the hardcore ones that were definitely, they had slaves. The orange, after the war broke out, are many of the states that still had slaves and still were considered part of the South, but it's a little grayer of an area. And then you see your light purple. These are all the border states. They're still considered Confederate states. West Virginia, too, was a new state at the time. So these, they were still included in slave states, and many of them ignored the proclamation. But they were supposed to. And slowly it started to change over, except for this gigantor state out here in the middle of the country, more to the west, called Texas. Texas did what Texas wanted to do. So we'll come back out. So what happened next? You'd think that when the president makes a proclamation and all the states were like, okay, we need to make this happen, put everything into place, find a way to enforce the law, that's what you do. And most of them did. Like, they're closer to Washington, smaller states, they had more travel in between. It became the way. However, Texas was far out there, and they were involved in a war. So what happened with it was that they, out in Texas, they had Appomattox courthouse. They had General Lee had surrendered there, and 2 months earlier in Virginia, but slavery had remained unaffected in Texas until U.S. General Gordon Granger stood on Texas soil and read General Orders Number 3. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. Yeah. So I'm going to show you a couple images. These are kind of neat. I'm going to show you. We're going to look at that. I think this is the one. This is it. Okay, so this is the day when the federal troops arrived in Galveston on Juneteenth. So Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, it took sending a general going there and saying, hey, all slaves are free now, so get on board, people. And it had been signed, and it depicted in this illustration, it says, watch the meeting in 1860, waiting for the hour. So they're waiting to find out when this is going to happen. Crowds of people recently freed from enslavement carry copies of the Emancipation Proclamation in this illustration. So there were parades, people were cheering and excited, but also, from what I've seen of different videos, there was a little bit of fear. What are we going to do next? What now? This has been our way of life for so long. How do you change? Oh, not going to load. So the Union commanders notice, gonna make it happen. Oh, internet. I'll try again. We'll try one more time. Sometimes it just freezes up. It's just the way it is, right? It'd be neat to see the pictures. Yeah, forget about it. But I do think that what is cool to me is seeing that everything kind of comes together. Stop sharing that there. Maybe that'll help. I'm going to bring it back now so I don't lose it. Yeah, I don't know. There it is. I don't know why it's being so weird. Anyway, so Juneteenth. Oh, yeah, like everything, all my notes are kind of frozen. It's not cool. So hopefully, so these people in Texas finally were free, and it was executive order, and then finally this happened. When slavery in the state didn't end overnight, it was a start of freedom for members of the Black community. Freed men and women took to the streets, singing spirituals and rejoicing together. It was amazing. The first Juneteenth official celebration took place a year later in Texas, and it's a combination of the word June and 19th. So Juneteenth. It's just very clever, right? But back then, that was like kind of amazing. So it kind of faded away after that. After the first year, people were, they're focusing on, bringing their lives together. A lot of people celebrated instead of June 19th, they celebrated on Independence Day, having like families had the day off from work anyway. So everyone would celebrate and there would be parades and people would talk about the history of becoming free and real citizens and treated such in the country. And having the right to vote, having the right to be a part of the system instead of slaves to it, and literal slaves. And it took a long time for it to kind of come back because people, take it for granted. And also, I think our media ignores many Black holidays. They ignore a lot of that. So why did it change? Let's see. So what happened was after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., Juneteenth was celebrated more widely. Sometimes it takes negative, horrible things to make change, just like our events lately with George Floyd in Minneapolis. It's not going to stop the horrible things from happening, but hopefully we start to see them less and less as people become aware, and everyone shows their outrage about the way people of color are treated in our country. And we need to have outrage. We need to have a voice to it. So there was something called the Poor People's Campaign that took part in solidarity on a rally on June 19th when people returned home. They took the Juneteenth traditions with them. So Texas finally declared Juneteenth an official state holiday in 1980. And after that, 44 other states, as well as the District of Columbia, observe it. I'll look up one thing. I like to look and just check, make sure what I'm saying isn't full of crap. There were many celebrations in Minnesota. National Juneteenth. Freedom Day is another name for it. It's not always called Juneteenth. Juneteenth kind of sounds like it's like, one of those clever, like mixed name, like a name that's mashed up together, like J-Lo and Jennifer Lopez and, that kind of thing. So, some people choose to call it Freedom Day or Emancipation Day. So I've seen other names for it. So don't let that confuse you. If it's on June 19th, it is definitely Juneteenth. So in 1997, the founder of National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, NJCF, Ben Haith, created a Juneteenth flag. Raising the flag ceremonies take place throughout June in Chicago, Illinois, Boston, Massachusetts, Las Vegas, Nevada, Memphis, and Galveston, Texas, and many more. So I'm going to see if I can find a picture of that. Let's see. So that way you see it. When you see it, you know what it is. If you don't already. Juneteenth flag. Okay, let's see. Here it is. Beautiful. I just make that the center. Okay. Well, here, I'll just show you. I'll show you. It's just easier. Visuals are always good. Here's what it looks like. That is it there. With the blue on top, the reddish orange kind of on the bottom, like a tomato, and an explosion and a star. And the star represents Texas. So finally, Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. It happened. So I feel like it's good to understand, what does it mean? A lot of people are new to like seeing it because it's really not talked that much about in the media, even though it's a very important holiday. And they raise this flag and sing the national anthem and the POC anthem called "Lift Every Voice and Sing." It's beautiful. So across the country this weekend, there will be, tomorrow, of course, but also this weekend, there are a lot of parades and peaceful protests. I know in my town of Mankato, there's one going on where they're going to walk. They're going to meet at a park in Mankato and then walk up around to the government centers and have a peaceful protest because of, even though slavery has been done away with, our country obviously has violence towards people of color, and it needs to stop. And I think the rallying of the community is very important to show that we will not put up with this kind of bullshit anymore. And I'm just like, it's horrific because you think that you watch the news and you only see a little portion of things. And what's brilliant about the world we live in, and also terrifying, is that you have access to news sources that aren't on the TV. You can see people using their phones to record events happening around them. And you see an unfiltered world, a truer world, which in some ways it's really hard for like soft-hearted people to see nonstop every day, that there are people being killed. There are people of color being killed for every day for no reason. And is it because we're desensitized? Is it because the police is so part of the system that it's covered up? I mean, why is that? And I want to grab this quick. I was talking about this on Facebook the other day. There's a book called The Illuminatus Trilogy. It's totally weird, and there's a lot of sex in it, and it's like sci-fi, fantasy, conspiracy theories. And this is your required reading. It's by two authors, Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson, and I got it a long time ago for $12.98. Probably at Barnes & Noble. So it's a beautiful book, and I've had multiple. I had a paperback one that got wrecked. It got wet. But so I keep buying it every so often. But totally worth it. There's a part of it that reminds me, and I think it's helped shape me in a lot of ways. So the Illuminatus has a Principala Discordia, where it is like the goddess Eris, the goddess of chaos, is worshipped in some of these societies, and they have sex with a golden apple. It's really weird. But the things that really got to me was about how media mashes with your brain. And in here they have a word called fnord. Fnord is just a word that they train children and people in that society to not see. So they'd sprinkle this word throughout newspaper articles and print things, and people wouldn't see it. But what it did was it would make you feel anxious and anxiety and fear. And it's symbolic because they would keep you, like, you wouldn't even want to watch the news. How many of us are like that now? We don't even want to watch it. Is there some kind of mind control going on? And I just feel like, there is something to be said for the way that why do you feel so sick every time? Is it because everything's so bad? Sometimes I see good news and it makes me not feel good. But in the book, what the government and the media did was when they wouldn't put the Nord word into commercials. So people would see the commercials and go, oh, I feel better. And so that equates buying things, being a part of purchasing and just continuous buying. That makes you just feel better. So it kept the society going. It kept the taxes coming in. It kept everything moving. And I don't think that part is that far off from the truth. So your required reading, if you choose to accept it, is to look for a copy of this. There's 3 books in this: The Eye in the Pyramid, The Golden Apple, and Leviathan. But I would just get them all at once. Because once you start, right away, you're like, this is weird. I don't know. But about halfway through, you're like, I have to know. I have to know what happens. And there's a lot of weird mental stuff that you're just like, oh my God, how does this all fit? But the conspiracy theory stuff will change you, and it will change your life. I would highly recommend it, or even getting like an audiobook version so you can just listen to it, because it's bananas. It is so bananas. But you reach a point where you just all of a sudden start going, wait, is this not real or is it real? And that's when it gets you, because there's a lot of truth to it. And I think some of the best truths are told in fiction. So I don't know how I switched to gears to that. Oh my God. So Juneteenth, there are a lot of things that they show us people, and they show our terrifying, like some of the riot stuff. I'm not going to lie. They're scary. And I think a lot of people, especially older people, are probably freaking the hell out right now, especially if you live in a city where any of this is going on. I can't even imagine what it's like for people living in Seattle right now, having like a zone where people are taking over and there's warlords and rape squads. I mean, like, look that crap up. You don't really, like, I get a lot of news from Facebook, and I know people that's their only source. And I always look around and I look at different kinds of resources, which I always will say, look for, if you only look at liberal news, look at conservative news, look at stuff in the middle, try to have an unbiased opinion, like open your mind to different possibilities. And I know it's scary and a lot of people just can't. But, if you feel like someone else is the enemy, at least try to understand where they're coming from. Okay. But there's so much going on that we don't see, that I feel like that's why it's important to have people like Freedom Revolution Network that are covering stuff and being out there in the people, around the people, with the people, talking to people. This could maybe not last forever. I feel like there's always a target on your back when you are someone that's willing to try to share your truth. And a lot of people aren't ready to hear your truth. So I'm glad that there's people every day. I mean, I'm always amazed that so many people every week come and listen. And I feel like I have a lot to say, but not a lot of outlets. So if you're part of my therapy, right? You get to listen to Heather talk about things that interest her, and in the third person, and it's kind of good for my mental health. So I recommend it highly. You should all have your own show. Tell me what your shows are, and I'll come listen to it too, and we can all get through this together. So let me see if I got through all the stuff about Juneteenth I wanted to share. There's weird stuff. Like you should go to the History Channel, the history.com page. There's so many interesting things that you can learn about. There are, here's one. Does an exception clause in the 13th Amendment permit slavery? Still permits slavery. This is like 2 years ago. There's an amendment which officially abolished slavery in the United States in 1865. Also includes a loophole regarding involuntary servitude, right? Now, this is something I was reading about too. It's crazy. So people always look at laws as something that you can bend. A lot of people think laws are something that are strict, that they never change, that if you break the law, you're a bad person. If you don't break the law, you're a good person. There's a lot of reasons that's not true, and sometimes why it is. But laws are bendy. Remember that. Unfortunately, when you leave a great big loophole in a law, people are looking for that, and they will use that. So what they had said was scholars, activists, and prisoners have linked that the exception clause to the rise of prison systems that incarcerates Black people at more than 5 times the rate of white people, I should add, and profits off the unpaid and underpaid labor of the people in the prisons. So we've taken people and given them freedom, but moved them into prisons so they can still be slaves. And it's usually our men and people of color in our country. So that made me think about it. They say that there's a law, Professor Andrea Armstrong at Loyola University in New Orleans said the 13th Amendment text allows for involuntary servitude where convicted of a crime. So involuntary servitude as a prisoner, right? And at the same time, the Black codes in the South created new types of offenses. So they could make it easier for Black people to get arrested. Therefore, you could still have slaves in prison. So this is something that people were looking for loopholes so they could find ways to still abuse people of color. And that's something I just want to mention is why it's so important that we have everyone thinking about this right now. Why Juneteenth is so important is that a lot of the evil and the maliciousness is behind the scenes, being formed with laws, being formed with offenses that can be arrested, and what we're going to do with the people. A lot of it isn't said, but these are the things we need to look for. So after the Civil War, there are new offenses called malicious mischief. They're vague. They're intentionally vague. They make it so you could have it be a felony or a misdemeanor, depending on how they feel about you. And it was like supposed severity of behavior. And back then, a cop says, "Oh, he was violent. He was trying to fight me," and you could have that cop could have been beating the shit out of someone, and it didn't matter because it was his word versus the person he arrested. So people could get felony cases in the South and be thrown away in prison and never come out again. So this is why it's so important that we have things in the judicial system where they have freedom of resources so they can study up on the legal system, so they can understand their court cases, so that they have good protection outside of the court system to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of in the legal system. And there is corruption in the police forces around the country. Not everyone who's a cop is a bad person, okay? But there is corruption when you get too big of organizations, too much power, no oversight, and a culture of bad behavior rewarded. You have to expect that things are going to go wrong. That's why we need to put our energy and our time into trying to correct some of the problems that have happened in our society, to notice and put a light on murders and things that are happening in communities especially where none of this should have ever escalated to violence. Why would you put your knee on someone's neck ever? Like, really? So there was a brief period of progress called the Reconstruction, where African Americans found themselves virtually defenseless. So the criminal justice system was strategically employed to force African Americans back into a system of extreme repression and control, a tactic that would continue to prove successful for generations to come. And I will argue that it's always been people of color, but now we're getting more of a divide where it's the poor versus the rich. And there's always been like a judgy kind of thing in our country, like you're with us or you're not with us, that kind of thing. And it's like really easy to become one of the statistics, and they would rather throw away people because you're easier to control. They'd rather spend money on you to have you easy to control. In a lot of ways, in a lot of prisons, they can get free work from you, and they can control you. And by putting away people with different ideals, different values in society, and people of color, you solve a lot of their problems because they're making warehouses of people that they never have to let go. And during a time of COVID-19, there is rampant coronavirus spreading throughout our prisons. It's second to our nursing homes, really. The nursing home system, I'll say it time and time again, is the most appalling, horrific thing that is going on in our country right now, is that we are forcing our elderly into basically solitary confinement for 3 months with no outside help, and they're being left to die of coronavirus. And they're the ones that are dying first. But we're seeing it in the prison populations as well. Is that humane? Is it humane to treat our elderly like that? Is it humane to put our populations that are in prisons like that? And some would say they committed crimes. Why should we care about them? Are they in there for crimes that hurt other people? Are they in there for crimes that are convenient? A lot of times drug crimes didn't really hurt other people, but they're targeted because they were a person of color. How many white drug dealers are in prison compared to black drug dealers? I mean, you think about it, and it isn't such an easy situation to look at. But a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to be there forever. They're not my concern. Our country has a judicial system that believes that people can serve their time and then become rehabilitated. And when they're rehabilitated, they can come back out into society. If you don't believe in that, there shouldn't be prisons. You should just, and I don't agree with that either. Like, we don't throw away people. Everyone has a story. Everyone has potential for redemption. Even if it's my idea of redemption is different than other people's idea of redemption. But, think about a person's life, what you're like when you're 18, what you're like when you're 12, what you're like when you're 30, what you're like when you're 70. It almost feels like you're different people in all of this, in this whole range of people. Does it stop you from changing? No. As you get older, you hopefully learn. And I would hope that we could have a prison culture that would work on making people feel a part of society. And there will always be some people that can't. But a lot of them regret it right away when they find out that they've let everyone in their lives down. A lot of them have children and spouses, and it's not right to throw people away. And I fear that our new racism is about throwing a huge proportion of our society into institutions of prisons, and it's not right. It's not good. So what I think about is that we need to work towards that, and we need to be thoughtful about things that we take for granted, that we don't understand. Because what was it? Yesterday, my husband was reading. He likes to read the news, and I'll listen and I go, oh, that's new. University of Florida, they had a cheer called Gator Bait. And he was like, I don't understand why they would get rid of that. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't sound racist. And they said it was because of racial connotations. I go, well, wait. Before you get crabby because you think it's probably some silly thing, it's not a silly thing, I bet. So I did some digging, and just to give you a little more of a background. This Florida president of the university, Kent Fuchs, said to the university's faculty, students, and staff that the cheer has horrific, historic, racist imagery involving African American people, especially children, being used as bait for alligators. I didn't know that. To me, like, I've watched a lot of, Discovery Channel and the science shows on TV where they show alligators in Florida, and they're throwing out a bucket of meat so to lure the alligators up so you could see them closer. I thought that was gator bait. I'm not from the South, so I don't know that they're, it makes sense that maybe they would use like something like a chicken or something, I'm like, ew, a live one, ew, that's gross. Little did I know it was worse. And I think you should always, the minute you hear something and you don't understand it and you're not sure why people are mad, always look it up. Always. And sometimes you're like, I wish I had looked that up because now I can't get it out of my head. Good. Because then you should be outraged too. They use this cheer in athletics. So it's gator bait. They would sing that. And they would do a chomping motion, pretending to be like an alligator, right? There was, and this is all kind of stemming from the George Floyd riots and protests that have gone all around the world, right? It spurs things. It reminds people of things that are painful and hard to even look at. And this University of Florida is the state's largest university, and they have about 52,000 students. And it's supposed to reopen in the fall because it's Florida, right? But we'll see. And they're starting to look into other race-related topics. And sometimes things that you see every day, you're like, oh, that doesn't seem like it'd be something that would hurt someone's feelings. And then you find out there's a history behind it. So I wanted to mention that I read this article about the history of gator bait. It's not cool. Okay. So if you have sensitive heart, you might want to just like steel yourself. People like alligators and crocodiles and that sort of creature, they're predators, right? They eat meat. There have been gator attacks around the country, and people get killed. They lose dogs, cats. I mean, people get bit. It's very dangerous. And there, people right now, like if a kid falls into an enclosure at the zoo, they'll kill the animal. They are horrified that anything would happen. I mean, children in our society, first of all, are highly valued. Second of all, it's not just white children that are valued. It is all children. They're beloved in our country, and that is a good thing. But there was a time where Black people were so undervalued and insignificant in society that they would do this thing, and I'm going to tell you about it, and it's like makes me ill thinking of it. There was an America where a child's life was so insignificant, and children back then, in the past, children had a very low chance of surviving their first couple years. In the old-timey days, some of them nearly didn't even get named officially, like in christening, until they're a little older because kids kept dying. So there was not a lot of value on children or babies. And that was also back when, children were to be seen and not heard. You heard that one before, right? So can you imagine someone putting a child into the pen of a dangerous zoo animal to lure them out? Who would do that? Well, or putting a child on the edge of an alligator-infested waters to lure a ferocious beast so hunters could shoot them. You can't imagine it, can you? Because no one would do that today. But in the Washington Times, in June 3rd of 1908, there is a horrible headline that says, baits alligators with pickaninnies, which is a horrible derogatory term that is for Black people and Black children especially. It says, zoo specimens coaxed to summer quarters by plump little Africans. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to read it, and it makes me ill. The New York Zoological Gardens zookeeper sent 2 black children into an enclosure. This is 1908. That housed more than 25 crocodiles and alligators. The children were chased by the hungry reptiles, entertaining zoo patrons. So people are watching this, while leading the alligators and crocodiles out of the reptile house, where they spent the winter, into a tank where they could be viewed during the summer. According to the newspaper article, 2 small colored children happened to drift through the reptile house. The zookeeper pressed them into service. He believed that alligators and crocodiles had an Epicurean fondness for the black man. He also believed, along with all the people who allowed it to happen, that the lives of those children were nearly valueless. There were no mention of punishment for the zookeeper, because back then that was like no one would have even blinked. They would have said, "Yep, that's his right." It's a very short article, and you can look. It's out there in the Washington Times. You can see it. It's still out there. It offers not one adjective that would imply the actions of the zookeeper were despicable, unthinkable, or even reckless, because that was the norm. Okay? So this is one thing that they put in the paper. What other things aren't they? Was using black children as a gator unacceptable? Back then, no. Unbelievably, no. It's hard to even believe. So this is not an unheard of idea that they said that black children were acceptable gator bait. This guy wasn't the first one to do it. It was a practice in the American Everglades that inspired lore and occasioned memorabilia. So there are things about it that are tied to black people and gator bait. So it's not like this is a brand new thing, kids. So in 1923, the Time magazine reported that colored babies were being used for alligator bait in Chipley, Florida. The infants were allowed to play in the shallow water, while expert riflemen watched them from concealment nearby. When the alligator approaches this prey, he is shot by the rifleman, with the intention that they will get him before it gets the baby. Don't worry. But they're not putting their own babies out there, are they? No. So it's obviously there's a devaluation. So this tactic was more humane than the one described in the Miami New Times article, though. Alligator hunters would sit crying black babies who were too young to walk to the water's edge. With a rope around their necks and waists, the babies would splash and cry until a crocodile snapped on one of them. The hunters would kill the alligator only after the baby was in its jaws, trading one child's life for one alligator's skin. They made postcards, pictures, and trinkets to commemorate the practice. I don't know if I can read anymore. It said in 1919 that the Richmond Times-Dispatch printed that it had been a joke called game protection. We understand Florida authorities are going to prohibit the use of live black children as alligator bait. They say they've got to do something to check the rapid disappearance of the alligator through indigestion. It's horrible. There's actually in Minnesota there's an article in the New Ulm Review previewing the attractions at the Brown County Fair, not far from where I live. The section about fireworks, the article boasted there will also be a big alligator pursuing a fleeing black child and many other beautiful designs. So how do I get that picture show up? I'm not having a good luck with my images today. I'd show it to you. Authentic History Center. I'm going to look that up. See if I can find it. I think this is the image. Oh, I'm just going to show it to you. And black babies and alligators. And this is a postcard from back in the day. Okay, establish a connection so I can share it. It's so hard to read this, guys. But I want you to know that just because you never heard of it before doesn't mean it's a thing and it's offensive and we should be horrified by it. And I find that some of the best learning experiences are when you go out there and you see for yourself. Oh, that's the same one. Dang it. Here. I'm going to just show you the picture, and it's off on the side, so it's not really great. I'm sure I can just show the image by itself. Open like a new tab. It's the same. Used to be you could just look at the picture, open image, and a new tab. There, I found it. Okay, I'm going to show you the picture from this. It's to show you how people would share this. This it? It's one of these two. 013. This one. Let's see if this is it. This is it. So this is somebody sent a postcard with this on there, and they would use the black babies to lure alligators. So it's not unheard of. People would send their friends stupid freaking postcards with imagery of this. It's not a pretty thing. And there was a lot of memorabilia, monstrous alligator swallowing black babies, jokes and celebrations. There's a lot of horrible stuff. It's a droplet in the swamp that is Mafa, derived from the Swahili term meaning great disaster in English. Mafa has come to represent a history of offenses and ongoing effects of horrors inflicted on African people, beginning with the transporting of Africans to America to enslave them. And the American Mafa is rife with dehumanizing violence. So this is one of the things they talk about. All of the putting people in boats, laying shoulder to shoulder, lying in their own piss and excrement. There's brutality in our country, and our country is built on the backs of people, on brutality and horror. But does that mean we have to continue brutality and horror forever? That's not the only way. But we need to acknowledge it. We need to know that terrible things happened. An example I'm going to give is I live in a town, Mankato, and it is the site of the largest mass hanging in the United States of Native Americans. Let me see if I can get the number, because I'm really bad with numbers off the top of my head. Here it even comes up. 38 Dakota Indians were hung in Mankato, Minnesota, in the largest mass execution in United States history on orders of President Abraham Lincoln. So remember that it's an ongoing thing. We have people that we love that do good things, like President Lincoln. We also have people that we love, like President Lincoln, who do things that I hate. And there's a dichotomy of good and evil. And it doesn't mean we all can't make things better. It just, and these people in Mankato that were hung, they were executed because of killing 490 white settlers, including women and children. And there's a Sioux uprising, Santee Sioux, and there was supposed to be a lot more people hung. Actually, many of them were pardoned. There were 303 that were supposed to die, and it went down to 38. So the good news was that many people advocated, and they took out a lot of people. But we remember it. And I remember going to a library conference, and people are like, what should we see in Mankato? And one of my friends said, oh, you should go see some of the site where they had the hanging. It has really good information, and they have fabulous, interesting statues and art. And it's something that makes it so you should think about, oh, I'm not going to do that. People are like, I'm not going to do that. Don't ever forget that just because something is bad and it makes you feel uncomfortable, and that there might be horror, you learn from it, you grow from it. So I think it's important that we all go out there and we support tomorrow, Juneteenth. We support that things that are wrong, like This gator bait, go away. We can learn. It may take us a damn long time, and it doesn't seem like to get easy, but change is possible. I think people have had enough, and I really, really hope that we can all grow from this. And I know I'm going to be a little over time, but we need to be very careful about getting rid of our history. And that's one thing I will hammer over and over again. Just because it makes you uncomfortable, because I talked today about what they did with Black children, doesn't mean we should never talk about it again. It may make you uncomfortable. Good. It should make anybody uncomfortable. Let's never do it again. Let's not celebrate it. Let's go. That's something we definitely don't do. We don't hurt children. We don't hurt Black people. We don't hurt people. We don't hurt people, period. Learn from it. It's something I hope we can learn, and that just because you are unhappy about that something exists too, doesn't mean that we have to live with it, but it does mean we shouldn't erase it from our history books. Maybe not celebrate it in a sporting event. Let's instead go, we don't do that anymore. Here's why. And like, yeah, no kidding, we don't do that anymore. Yuck. Good. And I do think that we live in a time where free expression is starting to be targeted. And I did find one article that I wanted to mention, since we're almost over time, on the free expression during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is from an article from the National Coalition Against Censorship. Great website. Please take a look at it. Donate. It's great. There's a timeline about things that we're losing our freedoms. So in March 20th of this year, this NCAC began monitoring civil liberties violations. Personal privacy is threatened on March 23rd. Countries around the world are implementing digital surveillance tools to watch and track the spread of the virus, right? They caution that increasing surveillance now could result in more invasive tracking, remaining the norm after the pandemic crisis. Remember, like when September 11th happened, that we had TSA installed. Do we need TSA? They're not effective. They make things cost more. Our flights cost more. They cause more problems than they solve, yet constantly being monitored by them. April 5th, Cincinnati man arrested for posting a video of people not social distancing. He's arrested by the Cincinnati police for posting YouTube video in support of large public gathering. Police argue that Davis not only violated Ohio's stay-at-home order, but encouraged others to violate it as well. His free speech was violated. His arrest raises concerns about the right to protest during the coronavirus pandemic, which was before the George Floyd stuff went down, and you could see that it was a seed in people's heads. Medical censorship, concerns in historical context. There was someone named Dr. Li Wenliang faced criminal charges in China for sounding the alarm on the coronavirus. American physicians and nurses fear they are headed down the same path, as they risk unemployment if they speak to the media about hospital equipment shortages. So April 9th, doctors and nurses lose jobs for speaking out. In New York City, many private and public hospitals have ordered workers not to speak with the media, a trend that is being followed worldwide. Why can't they talk to the media? They worry they're going to get sued. The American nurses and physicians risk losing their jobs if they speak to the media, threatening their rights to free expression and the public's right to access information from frontline workers. Many hospitals are affiliated with universities, and it also raises questions of academic freedom. So, DeSantis on April 11th pressured a law firm not to file public records suit. Abandoned public records lawsuit would have forced the state to release all the names of all elder care facilities that have a positive test for the virus. He's yet to give legal justification for his refusal to provide the records. So our elder facilities are targeted as a place where there's no free speech, no freedom of information about it. And they're locked up, so you can't even find out from the people who are in there. April 12th, China censors research on coronavirus origins. April 13th, Florida Surgeon General removed from coronavirus briefing. Let's see, we'll keep going down. April 14th, the right to protest during a pandemic, again and again. April 14th, Amazon fires employees who criticize warehouse safety. So people who are raising valid questions and concerns are being arrested and silenced. North Carolina woman arrested for protesting. They say it's a non-essential activity. Who is anyone to decide, even in the government, like what people do? What's essential, what's not essential? And once they've decided it, when does it end? How long does this continue? They made it so they can have like a military state. Medical professionals continue to be silenced by employers. Excuse me, got a tickle. Teenager threatened for arrest for social media posts about coronavirus. Doctor placed on leave after attending open Wisconsin rally. So I've heard of this kind of stuff again and again, where you have nurses that go to a bar and they get fired because they did a social media post, and people are like, oh, you're not safe now. You can get everyone sick. YouTube will ban content containing medical advice that contradicts World Health Organization recommendations. This is a big thing that pisses me off. There is no known cure. There is no known information that is 100% sure. Even the government, even the WHO do not have information that they do not contradict from day to day. So what is it to say that if somebody else has like a viewpoint or an idea about another treatment system, why can't they share it? That is definitely in the United States. It makes no sense at all. Leading health department official claims that he was reassigned to disagreeing with political pressure to advance untested virus treatment. So it goes on. That's just April, guys. I could read through all of this. It goes up to the end of May. They're funding a U.S. government funding Armenian website that spreads coronavirus disinformation. They awarded a grant to that. I mean, meatpacking plants open. Data about worker illnesses remains elusive. So they don't want regular people to protest. They don't want regular people to share their information. However, they are spreading their own disinformation, their own fake news. So who do you trust? Why would we trust them with information if they are just giving us bad sources, bad information? So this is the problem. And I really think that it's something you need to think about. I'm going to share this on my Liberty Librarian page. This article is really good. Free expression during the coronavirus pandemic timeline. I think you should look through the articles. Each of them have links that go to corresponding information on it. I think it's good stuff, guys. You really need to check it out. I'm going to put that now so I don't forget. But I think we're almost out of time. I really love getting to talk to you guys each week. I'm sorry this is really kind of a dark episode. It was darker than I intended it to be. I think it's a dark time. It's like scary and a little horrific. But I do feel like we're starting to come through it, and maybe we'll have a little light at the end of the tunnel. I hope so. And I think we can get through it together. I'm so glad that you can join me each week. If you want to ever meet me in person, go down to Orlando for the Libertarian National Convention is going on. I'll be there. We can visit. We can chat. If you like watch a show, come say hi to me. We got a couple weeks yet. Hopefully it still goes. I got my tickets. Gonna go there. It's going to be awesome. So I hope you have a good week. Happy Father's Day to the daddies out there, and to my daddy and all that, and kitty daddies and doggy daddies and whatnot. And just give people in your life a hug and take good care of them. It's a hard time right now, and we all are suffering a little bit, but I love getting to spend time with y'all. So have a good week. I will see you soon. Love y'all. Bye-bye, guys. End of broadcast.